What is going on, everybody? How is everybody doing today? Welcome back here today to another episode on Just Spawn. And today we are going to be doing a big trade deadline preview as the NBA trade deadline is in a few weeks. It's less than a month. I believe it's like February 6th or 9th, whatever that Thursday is. I forget off the top of my head. And today here on the channel podcast, we are going to be doing basically a trade deadline preview / tier list where I have 5 tiers and a bunch of NBA players that have been rumored in some way, shape, or form in trade discussions this year. We're going to have them as good as gone tier. Like, I would be insanely shocked if they're on their current team after the deadline. 50-50 chance, like, it could happen, it could not. Like, last year there were some guys that were moved, like, rumored a ton, like DeJounte Murray. We all thought he was going to get traded from the Atlanta Hawks. That doesn't happen. I feel like he could be somebody that's like 50-50, or like DeMar DeRozan from last year. Wouldn't shock me. Like, this team, the way they're constructed and the way they've operated in the past would not shock me, obviously. No one wants him. This team would like to move him, but they're either making too much money or they're playing too poorly for any team to really give up any assets to get them. And then 0% chance. Like, they've been in rumors, but I don't think there's any chance that they end up getting traded at the deadline. So yeah, I have a bunch of names here that I may also tweak. I could add some names throughout this. And if you guys are listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, I appreciate you guys a ton. If you guys are watching on YouTube, the audio versions of this are always going to be in the YouTube description below. So I'll probably circle back and forth here between the tier list and just like Basketball Reference just to pull up the stats and their contracts if I forgot off the top of my head. But we'll hop into this. First thing we have Andrew Wiggins. Now, Andrew Wiggins, the only reason why Golden State would move Wiggins is because they're trying to go all in with Steph Curry, and Steph Curry's come out. He doesn't want to play for a mediocre team. They are pretty much mediocre right now. They are 20-20. The Warriors this year are 15th in net rating, so they're perfectly mid this year, and they're not winning a title with the way that this roster is currently constructed. Wiggins is having probably the best year since the 2022 season, which is encouraging, and he's been available this year. He's played 34 games for Golden State out of their 40, and he's making $26 million this year, $28 million next year, $30 million player option in 27. And I think going into this year, this was looked at as like one of the worst contracts in the league and midway through last year, but he's definitely recouped some of that value. I'm going to put it at, I think wouldn't shock me. Like, I think Golden State, I'm sure they would like to add Cam Johnson at the deadline, and they trade away like Buddy Hield, Gary Payton, and a first-round pick. Like, maybe that's like their perfect dream there, or Kevon Looney, and they're attaching those contracts rather than moving Wiggins. If they're moving Wiggins, that means they're probably getting a big name, like it's a Jimmy Butler, like it's a Brandon Ingram, or somebody making a decent amount of money. So I would say Wiggins could be like around the 50-50, but I'm going to put him in wouldn't shock me. I don't think they are going to move him. I just think at the end of the day, they're going to do something a little bit smaller than that. I'm sure their fan base is going to be pissed, and they're going to revisit something in the offseason. Because even though, like, if you take out what he means and just overall human aspect of the game, and we're looking at strictly team management standpoint, they should trade Steph Curry. They 100% should just trade Steph and Draymond. You're not going to win a title with this team unless you're adding a top 10 player in the league. And is that going to even come available? Maybe, but like, you're not getting one of those guys unless you're somehow trading for Joel Embiid and he's just miraculously healthy for you guys, or you're trading for Kevin Durant or Devin Booker, which is just not happening. And I don't see how this team, like, we just watched the Thunder without Hardenstein and Chet Holmgren beat the best team in the NBA record-wise, the Cavs, by basically 30 points last night. And you're going to tell me that the Warriors can add like Cam Johnson and that team's beating Golden State? No, that's not happening. So I spent way too much time on Andrew Wiggins. We'll definitely talk about some other Warriors here. Anthony Simons, I think wouldn't shock me either. Simons is somebody that's been kind of inconsistent on both ends of the floor. Still encouraging as a player offensively, and is still just 25 years old in the league. And he's had plenty of volume in his career where he's a very good three-point shooter. But it's like, where would he fit on another team where he's not going to be getting 15, 16, 17, 18 shots a night? How effective is he going to look when he's taking 12 shots a night? He was pretty effective back in 2022 when Damian Lillard was there, and in 2023 as well, as like a kind of sidekick there. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's probably got the most trade value out of any of the guys on the market for Portland. We're going to talk about a ton of Portland guys here. I even want to add, I think I forgot to put in DeAndre Ayton, but he's somebody we do have him. So like, we're going to talk about like 4 Portland guys. And I think if they were going to make Simons available, he would probably intrigue me the most on the market. $25 million this year, $27 million next year. I'm not even sure if he would make more than that on the next deal. So you can maybe like trade for him, maybe extend him in the offseason, give him some guaranteed money, and then I don't know. We'll see where he's at, as the Clippers clamped him up the other night. Bradley Beal, this is like the reason why I made the no one wants him tier. The Suns want to get rid of him. The Suns regret trading him. They want Jimmy Butler, and the only person that can realistically do that, well, they could trade KD and Booker for Jimmy Butler. That's not happening. Bradley Beal would make the most sense, and although Jimmy Butler is probably a better complementary piece and a better player than Beal to KD and Booker, I don't really think it changes that much for them. I still think they're a second round exit at best if they do get Jimmy Butler. Like, say they miraculously swap Beal and a first for Jimmy. It's not happening. I would be very shocked. But if that happens, I still don't think they're better than Dallas at full strength. I don't think that they're better than the Thunder at full strength. Maybe not even like Memphis at full strength. But then again, like maybe I'm discounting Jimmy, and I gotta remember what he is when maybe he actually wants to win for your team. I'm like what he wants to do for Miami this year. But Beal's making 50 this year, 53 next year, 57 million in 27. Why would Miami want that? Miami's a big free agency destination. Beal would have a no trade clause on your team, which why would you want that on your team? Because then you're not going to be able to get rid of him if you wanted to trade him to like a Charlotte or a Utah, to a team that would take on his money. He's never going to waive that. And Miami could end up getting one of these big free agents down the line. Who knows who's going to become available at one point. Maybe they're like a Brandin Ingram team in the offseason or somebody like that. So I honestly don't think they want Beal's contract. No other team, I think, would want it in a 3-team trade, because Phoenix can only trade one first. I think that contract is so bad you would have to trade 2 first-round picks to get off of it. And Beal has the no trade clause, which comes down to like, I kind of want to put 0% chance for Beal, but like, maybe he's just like, I don't want to be here anymore. I'll go to anywhere else, honestly. Next up, Brandon Ingram. I'm putting it at a 50-50. I don't think he's as good as gone. He's going to come back soon. And I'm intrigued to see like who they move to the bench. It can't be Trey Murphy. Maybe it's CJ McCollum, and he's like going to be the veteran and leader in the room until the deadline, until they figure out this team. But Ingram, like he's out for tonight's game, meaning he should be back soon, which is exciting because he hasn't played in a little bit, only 18 games this year. But you go down to that contract, he's a free agent at the end of the year. Now, like, unless he's signing a max deal with like Brooklyn or Detroit, I would actually love the idea of him in Detroit next to Cade. But unless he does that, like, no team isn't going to have really the cap space to sign him, but you're going to really run the risk of him becoming a free agent. Now, maybe David Griffin, the GM or the president, is in the same mindset as Pat Riley is over in Miami. And he's like, a team that wants Ingram is most likely going to have to orchestrate a sign and trade with us. And we're going to get maybe better assets in the offseason when it could make a little bit more sense for some teams, and some more teams become desperate and want to change their 3 to 5 year outlook. And they go for Ingram, who's 27 years old and is still a very good playmaker at the wing at 6'8" and is a very good scorer. So I don't know who ends up trading for Ingram. This is going to be a very big part of the year for him when he comes back until the trade deadline. Like, I don't know. The Pelicans keep losing games and he's playing well. They're probably going to get a better trade package for him. And I think they'd be inclined to move him, which is going to basically end the era of the pieces from the Anthony Davis trade, because Josh Hart is in New York. Lonzo's in Chicago. He was the big piece, and that might be gone. I think Daniels was one of the draft picks as well, Dyson Daniels. So, DeAndre Hunter as well in that trade. So, Brandin Podziemski, I would put it at wouldn't shock me. I think they'd prefer to, if it came down to like Pods or Kuminga, maybe they would move Pods because they're not far in age, and Kuminga has shown a lot more over the last 2 years. He's obviously been in the NBA for 2 more years. He's actually like not that much younger. They're basically like 200 days apart, which is, like they're in the same calendar year. October of 2002, February of 2003. So closer than you may think. And I think Pods, they would, still get value for him, but they'd be selling low. So that's why I think like I would put him in the wouldn't shock me. I don't think I could put him in the no one wants him, but I think it's more like, are they going to get equal value for Brandin Podziemski at the deadline? Probably not. And you hope that he has a strong second half. Brook Lopez wouldn't shock me either. This team is, I don't know. Milwaukee's kind of desperate right now. I mean, they've been better over the course of the year. They are 11th in net rating, top 10 defensive team, close to a top 10 offensive team, with getting pretty inefficient play. Well, not inefficient play, but Chris Middleton, who we'll get to, is maybe regressing right now. Brook Lopez has been like a consistent 3-point shooter once again this year. You could see the defense dropping off just a tad, but he's still effective there. I would say, wouldn't shock me, rather than 50-50, which I think I'm going to throw Chris Middleton in 50-50, because if they're looking to make a significant upgrade, it's probably Bobby Portis or Chris Middleton. And I don't know if Bobby Portis is going to be able to match the salary of a player they want. Chris Middleton, they recently moved to the bench. He's been up and down with injuries this year. And if they wanted to trade him for, I don't know, like Brandon Ingram, like say they offered a first round pick, Chris Middleton, and Andre Jackson for Brandon Ingram, would New Orleans be interested in that? Or AJ Johnson? Maybe, I don't know. Because Milwaukee's first round picks down the line could become valuable to some teams, debating like seeing what Giannis is going to be in the future. He's got $31 million this year, but you have to pay him $34 million next year. Maybe Middleton gets rerouted to a different team. Maybe that's like a Detroit that's looking to add like a number two to, not a number two to Cade, but like some veteran help next to Cade. And they're not like a big free agency destination. If they're like, yeah, we're not going to get Ingram, we can pivot to Middleton. We can get the last 2 good years of his career, where he actually started his career back in Detroit. Maybe he gets rerouted to a team like Charlotte that's willing to take on his big cap hit. I would say 50-50, because I think if Milwaukee's going to make a big move, which I think they may, because they're looking at Boston right now, who looks beatable this year. I know Cleveland has been the best team in the Eastern Conference all year long, but I don't think teams are like, all right, this is Cleveland's year, we're not going to go all in. I do believe that teams are still going to have the mindset they could beat Cleveland in a 7-game playoff series, because Cleveland lost to Boston last year, New York 2 years ago. This team is the best it's been in the Donovan Mitchell Cavs era, 100%, and they're probably the odds-on favorite. I don't know them off the top of my head to make it out. Like if we look, I think they have the best playoff. Like we can look at, I guess, Basketball References playoff probabilities to win the conference finals, 48% in the East, Boston 33, New York's 12%. So they're the favorite to get there. Second best finals odds according to this probability metric. I still think teams though would go all in. I wish I can kind of see what it was last year. Maybe you can, because like I feel like Boston's would have been a little bit higher. But yeah, I think they'd go all in. Cam Johnson's got to be as good as gone, right? They moved Dennis Schroeder. They moved Dorian Finney-Smith. Cam Johnson is the one player on this team that I think would actually get 2 first-round picks the way he's playing this year. He gets injured. He comes back. Doesn't look like he lost a step. Efficient games against Toronto, or efficient game against Portland, basically not playing in 12 days. He's averaging a career highs across the board, 42% from 3 on the highest volume of his career. I think so many teams would be interested in Cam Johnson that could use some shooting. Like we look at maybe some of the top teams in the league, like they don't maybe have the best 3-point shooting numbers. If I looked at just team overall 3-point percentage this year, like we look at Orlando, dead last, 30% from 3. They have the assets to go out and get Cam Johnson. Houston, top 4 team in the West. They are 28th in the NBA in 3-point percentage. They can go out and get Cam Johnson. I don't know about Philadelphia, but you're looking at the Lakers, the Kings, the Thunder are ranked 19th, and they can go out. Like, they're not like the best 3-point shooting team in the world, and they can definitely go out and get Cam Johnson and probably outbid almost anybody with their draft picks. So, yeah, I think the Nets are actually going to get a good return in somewhat of a seller's market. He's going to be the most, I think, intriguing trade piece, because it's not like Cam Johnson's a free agent at the end of the year. And I think the way he's playing in his age, you would still get a first for him, but free agent at the end of the year, that's tough. He is making 22.5 this year, 20 next year, 22.5 and 27. That may be one of the best contracts in the league for anybody that's available at the deadline. So teams are going to be lining up, and I think that's going to be a great return for Brooklyn. We could stay on the topic of Cam Thomas. I don't know if it's like nobody wants him. I don't think he gets traded. I don't. He's a restricted free agent at the end of the year. It's weird to put a value point on him because Cam Thomas is an incredible scorer, but does he fit any team that's trying to win a title? Can you plug and play him? Can you ask him to step up on the defensive end of the floor? He would be going from the number 1 option in Brooklyn to a number 4 option on a team. I just don't think he gets traded. The restricted free agent thing makes it a little tricky. I think if a team gets intrigued in him in the offseason, there could be some type of sign and trade. Like, I'm sure Brooklyn, like, say you threw out a 4-year deal with $100+ million for Cam Thomas in free agency. Brooklyn, I think, would just match it and then look to trade him. It would be like a sign and trade. I forget if Lonzo was restricted. I think so, when he became a free agent, when he went from New Orleans to Chicago. That could be something similar here. The Nets can get like a protected first round pick instead of him leaving for nothing. And I don't think he's going to be a big part of their future plans right now. I think you'd want to be selling high on him. I don't think nobody wants him, but I don't think Cam Thomas gets traded. Cam Whitmore, I don't think he gets traded. I just throw him in here because I think if the Rockets make a big move, he would be somebody that teams could be intrigued about, because he's appeared in 22 games this year. He's spent some time in the G League, 15 minutes a night, was coming off a very productive rookie year. Had was he on an all-rookie team last year? I guess not, no, because I think he only played 47 games. Maybe he was, though. It's just I'm not seeing the accolade here. But he's under contract for the next 2 years after this year under his team deal. And since he was picked outside the lottery, it's a very cheap amount. Like, say Jimmy Butler goes to Houston or something like that, right? Could Cam Whitmore be one of the young pieces going back? I would say, I don't know if I want to put 50-50 or wouldn't shock me. Maybe I'll put in wouldn't shock me. Chris Paul, man, I don't think Chris Paul gets traded right now. I think he is too valuable to San Antonio, and they may have a legitimate chance at making it to the playoffs. And maybe Chris Paul's like, unless I'm going to, I don't know. Like, I don't know if like the Thunder would even want him, or definitely probably not Cleveland because they've tied Jerome. Like, is he even going to go to a team where he can actually play? How many minutes is he playing? 29 minutes a night, or is that going to be like slashed in half? And yeah, he can get a ring, but I don't know. Maybe he's enjoying his time in San Antonio. I mean, I guess I'm going to throw him in the wouldn't shock me because he is 39 years old. And if they do get a semi-good offer for him, they'd probably be wise to take it. But he's been so much fun to watch this year, and him and Wemby have been an enjoyable duo. So I guess it can't shock me. He's 39 years old. They may not make the playoffs. Like right now, they're the 11th seed or 12th seed. Here they are they're the 12th seed. And I don't think they fall past that because Portland, Utah, and New Orleans are pretty bad. So next up we have Clint Capela. I think Clint Capela could be an intriguing trade piece. I'm going to put him at 50-50 because Clint Capela's got 1 year left on his deal. And if they wanted to go out and add, I don't know, like I assume they'd look to add some defense, but they're around league average offensively. And the Hawks they want to make the playoffs because they don't own their first round pick this year. That goes to San Antonio. I don't think Clint Capela is like that much better than Onyeka Okongwu. Is he better? Probably. But I think you're okay trading Clint Capela for something else. And you hope Larry Nance Jr. becomes healthy again. And you can have Nance Jr. and Okongwu in that front court or at that center rotation. And then you can maybe get something for Clint Capela, who's got $22 million this year. You can match that up with a ton of guys. Like, are they a sneaky Cam Johnson team? Cam Johnson with Trae Young, that'd be a lot of fun. They have the assets to go out and make a move. So maybe they look to trade Clint Capela for something here at the deadline. I think Collin Sexton is 50-50. I think he should get traded, and Utah should look to move him on from him. 26 years old, one of the only few reliable scorers on this team, who's 47 from the field, 42 from three, 90 from the line. Yes, there's a ton of defensive concerns in Sexton's game. I'm not going to say he's a good defender, but I think he's good enough in the half court offensively where he can actually be a six-man for you in the playoffs, who's making $18 million this year. And he's under contract next year at $19 million, which may hurt the value a little bit because then paying Sexton $19 million is good. Do you want to pay Sexton $28 million? Probably not. So I think that's going to maybe make his value a little intriguing at the deadline. Like, do you think you can get him for just one first round pick? Possibly. So I'm going to put him in 50-50. Out of Ingram, Middleton, Capela, and Sexton in the 50-50s, I think Ingram's the most likely. Then I would go Sexton, Middleton, Capela. Damian Lillard, I think there's a 0% chance. It's more so like the rumors like Milwaukee still wants to do a massive upgrade at the deadline. Would they do Damian Lillard for Jimmy Butler? No, that doesn't really make any sense. That's a 0% chance that our Dame gets moved. At least at the deadline, 0% chance De'Aaron Fox gets moved. They did they beat they did beat the Rockets last night. And Fox is a free agent at the end of next year. But I think Sacramento is more so going to buy. They fired Mike Brown. I wonder if they make the playoffs, like, will Doug Christie be brought back as the head coach? Either way, I think they're not moving Fox this year. That would become a offseason thing if he does request a trade or say that I'm not re-signing with you guys, or I'm going to test free agency. Then it gets a little interesting there. DeAndre Ayton, nobody wants him. I'm sure they would love to trade him. I'm sure they'd love to just play Donovan Clingan and start him every night for the rest of the year. But I'm watching DeAndre Ayton and I'm like, damn, this guy was picked above Luka Doncic, Trae Young, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I know it's a completely different player from what he was at Arizona. And even like those second and third and fourth years in Phoenix, maybe that was a product of playing with Chris Paul and that helped him out a ton. But man, there was an encouraging stretch last year towards the end of the year where he was averaging like 18 and 10 after the All-Star break. And now this year, I mean, like, the offense isn't as effective. He doesn't really look as mobile as he has in the past either. And the body language defensively, I don't love. $34 million this year, $35 million next year. Like, yeah, they could help orchestrate a Chris Middleton deal or a Bradley Beal deal, but I just don't think anybody wants him. And unless somebody does want him, it's because they're getting some draft capital to get off that. Isaiah Jackson I threw in here. I don't think it would shock me. Isaiah Jackson is a restricted free agent at the end of the year. And I know Miles Turner's a free agent at the end of the year, so it could have been interesting if the Pacers were bad, but that Nembhard, Mather, and Halliburton, Siakam, Turner lineup is one of the best lineups in the league when we're able to see it. The only reason I put Isaiah Jackson in here is because he's a restricted free agent at the end of the year, kind of like a D'Anthony Melton thing. Could a team give them something and they can make a move if Indiana wants to be like a full-on buyer at the deadline? And that could help with the money and the team that trades for him can get his restricted rights in the offseason. So that wouldn't shock me. Next up, we do have Jabari Smith Jr. I don't think he gets traded. I don't. I think if it's likely, they maybe would move Reed Shepherd if it really came down to it over Jabari Smith Jr. He did fracture his hand, which is a shame too. And I think that's going to like the team. I mean, like if you're trading for Jabari Smith Jr., you're probably giving the Rockets a veteran and you're maybe like it's a Jimmy Butler deal and you're okay with him being out for the year. And then you're going to really let him shine next year, hopefully. But I don't think that they end up moving him because I do like what he's done defensively this year. Grayson Allen wouldn't shock me. No, he's having a very down year compared to his like breakout 3-point shooting year last year. Shout out to Grayson Allen having the best shooting year of his career right before he was going to get paid. And now he's making a decent amount of money. He's he's shooting 43% from 3 this year. It has been better, I guess, over the last few games. Oh, wow. He's like, I guess I haven't looked at this in a few days, but like 71%, 75%, 50, 40, 83. He's been heating up. Hey, that's going to help out the trade value for sure. 100%. But it's 15, 16, 18, 19 million the next 4 years. It's not terrible in today's NBA. Not a great defender. He's playing 25 minutes a night compared to 33 last year. But I think there would be some value. So I would say it wouldn't shock me. Next up, we have Jalen Hood-Schifino. I wanted to say good as gone. Like, is this Jalen Smith, Phoenix Suns 2.0? Just because he's not coming back next year, so they might as well trade him, right? It's kind of like him and Marjon Beauchamp. I would say, I don't know, 50-50 he gets moved. I know it's not really that intriguing. Jared Vanderbilt, same thing, 50-50. It's more so him making the money work in a deal. And I don't think I threw Gabe Vincent in here, but he would also be thrown in 50-50 as Vanderbilt is finally coming back soon from that injury that he's been out since basically when in 2024 was his last game that he played? The last time that Jared Vanderbilt has played in an NBA game was February 1st of last year. So it's going to be over a year since he played with this knee injury. And then there was like a flare up in the offseason. He's 25 years old. I think a team would be intrigued. But the contract isn't the best, like 10, 11, 12, 13. That's significant money. And like that knee injury could linger, and that's a little scary. So 50-50, it's more so like that being in there financially to get a deal done. Jeremy Grant, nobody wants him, man. I wouldn't trade for Jeremy Grant. And this is like more so, I don't know, a team being desperate. Like this Bradley Beal waive his no trade clause, and Jeremy Grant is somehow thrown in this deal to make the money work because they can help orchestrate a deal. But I mean, you look at his numbers this year. You see 38% from the field, 38% from 3, 40 or 82% from the line. He's still a fine scorer, but it's down a ton from what it was last year. Maybe it's just him not being as involved as much in this like Blazers offense. He's taking 3 less shots per game, and they're on a rebuilding team, and maybe he's just over that. And it feels like Jeremy Grant's been on a rebuilding team his whole career, like spending those 2 years in Detroit, last 3 in Portland. Denver 2020 was good, but like those late teen years in OKC now, they were good those years. So, but you look at the contract where it's one of the worst contracts in the league. $29 million this year, $32 next year, $34 in 2027, $36 million in 2028. Shout out to Jeremy Grant getting that bag, but that's a lot of money, and I don't know if any team wants to commit to that unless they think he can kind of turn around the way he plays as someone that could fit in as the 4th option on a good team. But that's just a lot of money, and they had a reason, like, they gave him that money during moratorium, and I believe they could have got out of that. Like, they gave him that contract knowing that Damian Lillard requested a trade. I don't know. I don't really think that was the greatest idea. I don't think Jarace Walker gets moved at the deadline. Maybe that's something that arises in the offseason if they realize they need to shake up the roster a little bit. I would like to see him maybe on a different team because I'd like to see him play 25 minutes a night. Which we're getting a little bit more as of late. And there have been some really encouraging games on both ends of the floor for Walker, but I just don't think Indiana is going to move him. They seem like they just strike me as like a conservative team. They're not going to make too big of a risk at the deadline. Jimmy Butler's got to be as good as gone, right? Like no way Jimmy makes it through the deadline without getting traded, because that would just be silly on Pat Riley's part. Like, I don't know if he has any value because he's 35 years old. He's going to want a new contract in the offseason. That's going to kill a ton of your leverage. And he's publicly wanted out. So teams are like, what are you going to do? Keep him at the deadline? We're going to offer you pennies on the dollar for Jimmy Butler. So maybe Pat Riley's like, you know what? That's fine. I'd rather keep him on the team. He's given up on the team. He's going to sit out the rest of the year, and he's not going to be able to get what he wants, and he's not going to be on a playoff team. And in the offseason, if he wants to go to one of these teams, he's going to have to do a sign and trade. Because I don't think Brooklyn has came out and said they're probably not going to go after Jimmy Butler in the offseason. They want to continue their rebuild. I doubt he's signing a max deal with Detroit. So unless a team does a complete salary dump and then gives Jimmy Butler a deal, it's likely that if Jimmy's on this Heat team after the deadline, the Heat could get something for him in the offseason, which I think also hurts Jimmy's chance of maybe getting extended by the new team because he'll be a little bit older, and we may not see him in the second half of the year. It seems like this relationship is over, which is kind of sad because Jimmy in Miami since 2019 has been, or since 2020, has been one of the more entertaining, like, Miami Heat eras since, like, the Heatles era, basically, where he brought them to the finals of the bubble and in 2023. And that incredible playoff run from Jimmy, it's just like, I don't think Golden State's trading for him. He doesn't want to go to Memphis, it seems like. I don't know if he wants to go to Milwaukee, but they kind of still strike me as a team. I don't know about the apron here, but you're trying to do Lopez and Middleton for Jimmy. I don't know if you can even do, I don't even know if you can do Bobby Portis and Middleton, sorry, for Jimmy, because I haven't really used Spot Track's trade machine, but I know that they're a little bit better with the apron than Fanspo is, because they're going to be a big apron team. Let me just show you guys. Let's just do this on the spot here. So say we did Jimmy to Milwaukee, and then for Milwaukee we did, I mean, this is going to be tough. Like we did Middleton, Portis, and we'll say Connaughton. Like, can they keep, so this trade fails, you're exceeding, you can't aggregate players, right, in the apron. Unless I throw in 5 million more, which I don't even know. Yeah, you really have to do like Brook Lopez. So say you did this. Will this work? I don't think so. I don't really think you could do. Okay, I'm really covering this whole trade. Sorry, I apologize here. But yeah, this is basically what I'm working with here. Middleton, Lopez, Connaughton for Jimmy Butler. And I think there's just a lot of apron issues there. So I basically just spent that time, just talking about that the apron is not going to let this trade work going forward. So, I think Jimmy, though, is as good as gone. Will it be Milwaukee? Maybe not. Is it going to be Houston? Maybe. It's not going to be Dallas. It's probably not going to be San Antonio, or I don't think he wants to go to Memphis. I doubt it's going to be Phoenix because of the Bradley Beal thing we talked about before. I said no to Golden State. I don't know where Jimmy ends up. Is it like a surprise team, like Detroit trades for him, or Atlanta? Maybe. Indiana? Maybe. He's got to be as good as gone, right? Jordan Clarkson, I don't know if anybody wants him. Like, I think they would like to trade him, and I'm sure they've tried to, but he's 32 years old this year. He's, I don't think, as good of a six-man as he's been in the past, like when he won six-man of the year, but you look at the efficiency a little bit. 16 shots a night, 42-34 splits. Not really that encouraging for somebody that's going to want him to play some defense in the playoffs and be efficient. And I know, like, when he's on, he can be on, but you're owing him 14 mil this year, 14 mil next year. You know what? I don't think anybody would want him. I would probably put him at 50-50, but I think the inefficiency over the last few years can hurt his trade value a little bit. So I'm going to throw Clarkson in there. Jordan Poole, nobody wants him. Jordan Poole, though, I think has actually recouped a little bit of trade value this year because he's been efficient and he's been 10 times better than he was last year for Washington. Like, he was really better in the first half last year. He had a strong end to the year. Who knows? He's 25 years old. Like, we talked about some bad contracts in this video. I'd rather have Jordan Poole than Ayton, Grant, or Beal. So maybe if there is some type of 3-team deal, maybe Jordan Poole is going to go to, like, Phoenix. Nah, that would not make sense. But, like, maybe he goes to a team that's looking for an upgrade with one of their bad contracts, right? So, hey, that is a possibility, but I'm going to still throw him in the nobody wants him. Jonathan Kuminga, I would say 50-50 at this point. He probably has the most value on the Warriors outside of Steph Curry because he's been better over the last few weeks. The three-point shot's been a little bit better. He's only 22 years old, but he is a restricted free agent at the end of the year. And it depends. Like, the Warriors keep him. They're probably going to look to extend him. Could you do an extended trade in the offseason? Maybe gives you a little bit more flexibility. But I think if they'd like to make a move, I think Kuminga's got to be at the forefront of that. So next up, we have Josh Giddey. I'd probably put this at 50-50 as well. I'm going to drop my face cam down here so you guys can see this. But yeah, I think Giddey would probably get moved from Chicago if there was any market for him, because I still think he can impact the game offensively with his court vision. But man, is he not a good defender. And the shot is coming back down to earth before, like, he was Steph Curry at the beginning of the year. I think they would like to move him, but I just don't know if anybody wants him. But he's a restricted free agent at the end of the year. I don't think he would go for much. Julius Randle wouldn't shock me. The Minnesota Timberwolves have been disappointing relative to their expectations. Before the Cat trade, we were like, this is a top 3-4 team in the West. We wouldn't be surprised if they won the finals this year. And they've not looked that great offensively. And Randle, I think, has struggled sometimes as the number 2 to Anthony Edwards. He could be a free agent at the end of the year. I think right now he would opt into that player option. I don't know if he would want to test the open market. And I think that could end up getting him to be moved right now. I think a couple like role players here, Josh Green, excuse me for still having him in a Mavericks jersey. It wouldn't shock me. just a role player that a team could want in the playoffs, and the Hornets are looking to maybe get some draft capital at the deadline. They would look to do that. Same reasoning for Kelly Olynyk potentially getting traded out of Toronto. They're not going anywhere this year, and I think they can test the market there. I got to add Jakob Poeltl because I'm going to put him at 50-50 as well. He's making a little bit of money, but I think teams would still want to trade for Jakob. He's cooled off a little bit as of late, but I think teams would be interested in him at the deadline. Keegan Murray wouldn't shock me either. If the Kings are realistic in making a big move to try to win around De'Aaron Fox, they could move. I can attach him and Kevin Huerter. I think Kevin Huerter is probably 50-50 as well. I actually think Kevin Huerter is as good as gone because they got to match that money somewhere, and he's making $17 million. And like, I don't think a team would want to pay him next year, and he's owed money next year as well, but they got to orchestrate a deal somehow. So I think that's where Keegan Murray's like wouldn't shock me comes in. Could they attach Keegan Murray and Kevin Huerter for Cam Johnson? And I think Brooklyn would be intrigued about Keegan Murray. They whiffed on the idea of trading Keegan for Siakam, which I thought was a little like rich for Toronto to ask. They could have maybe done that for OG Anunoby. I don't know if they regret that because of Murray having a down offensive year, but it wouldn't shock me if that is a big deal if Sacramento's a little bit desperate because of their kind of poor record start to the year. I mean, they're 21-20. They're the 9th spot, and they have a very good net rating in the NBA. They're number 10 right now, so I think they'll be fine over the second half of the year. Malcolm Brogdon, 50-50. It's only because the contract is a little expensive, where Brogdon's making like $20-ish million this year, and he's a free agent at the end of the year. So if we just saw what Dennis Schroeder went for, and they might be close in age. Schroeder is a year younger actually, and Schroeder went for basically some like some second swaps, like 3 seconds for 1 second. It's probably gonna be something like that for Washington, and because Brogdon is a free agent at the end of the year. It's just 22 million is tough to match. Like Schroeder was a lot lower than that. Schroeder was at like 12-14 million. So I think it's 50-50 if they could just even find a team that could take on that money. Mitchell Robinson wouldn't shock me. I won't put it at 50-50. The Knicks need to see him get some runtime and see how he looks before the deadline. And if they don't, I mean, that may make him lose a ton of value. He's going to be cleared for practice at some point in January, so we should get him back before the deadline. And the Knicks could use a Mitchell Robinson. Does that make Precious Achiuwa expendable? But Robinson, I honestly, 26 years old. He's had his injury concerns in the past, but he could be a great lob threat and a fantastic offensive rebounder. And I think that's what the Knicks need. But I do wonder if they're going to attach that money to try to get 2 rotational pieces for the deadline, because OG, Bridges, Hart are playing some of the most minutes in the NBA. And this team could run the risk of an injury in the playoffs. I think Nick Claxton wouldn't shock me as well. He's having a down year, but he got extended. I actually don't think anybody wants him. I think the Nets would look to trade Claxton if they can get something for him, because Noah Clowney's been kind of interesting this year. Sharp's a restricted free agent. They could add some big men in the offseason, but Claxton's having down numbers across the board. I did not know his nickname was the Alchemist. The Slim Reaper. Not Kevin Durant. Wait, does he actually have the same nickname as Kevin Durant? I don't know who gave him that. I know what you're saying, but he's the Slim Reaper. KD's just Slim Reaper. All right. Nikola Vucevic. I think he's as good as gone. I think a team will trade for Vucevic. It's a little bit easier financially to trade for him than Zach LaVine. And if you have a center that could shoot 42% from 3, I know there's some defensive issues, but you're not going to ask them to probably start for you in the playoffs if you're trading for him. And I think a team that could look for some shooting, like maybe it's the teams we talked about. Now, it's not going to be OKC, but maybe it's a team like Orlando. That would be a cool reunion, I guess. I actually don't know if Magic fans would want that. Maybe it's a team like Houston that is just looking to get some floor spacing off the bench for the playoffs. And I think he would go for some seconds. And I think Chicago would be fine trading him for some seconds. And you got him under contract for $21 million next year if you wanted to maybe make a trade in the offseason. I think Robert Williams is as good as gone as well, just because he's easier to trade for. And I don't think he's far from the Robert Williams trade value wise we had in our mind when he was in Boston, and they traded him at the right time and they were able to send him in that Drew Holiday deal. But he's making $12 million this year, $13 million next year. That's a pretty easy contract to move. And he doesn't look as good as he has in the past, but he's not playing a ton because they have Ayton and Klingon. But I think he's going to get moved. Rozier wouldn't shock me. He's having a down year this year. I actually think nobody wants Terry Rozier. I think they probably look to move him or Robinson. But yeah, Rozier's been incredibly inefficient this year. This is not looking like a good trade whatsoever for Miami last year. He looked so far from what he was in Charlotte in a role that is a little bit more serious than being on a bad Hornets team. Now you're going to Miami where you're trying to make the playoffs and you're playing a ton of more minutes in crunch time. 24 this year, 26 million next year. Yeah, I don't know if anybody wants that. So I think they'd like to move him, but nobody wants him. Walker Kessler, I guess 50-50. I don't know why Utah would want to move him, but I think he would have a very good market because he's under team control next year as well. and he's really good. I just don't know why they would want to move him, but he's been in rumors the last like year and a half, so I think it's 50-50. LaVine, 50-50 as well. He's just a little bit tougher to move than Vooch. I think Chicago would like to move LaVine, who's had a very good like calendar year 2025 since the year started, and he's so efficient. He could be, I think, like a number 2 or number 3 in the playoffs. Like, I wonder if Denver would do like a Michael Porter Jr. or Zach LaVine type trade, get a third team involved, maybe send Michael Porter Jr. to like Detroit or somebody like that, or San Antonio, and you can get some like cap relief there. Maybe that's something that ends up happening, but I think it's going to be a big deal financially to be made at the deadline. Zion, I don't know if it's nobody wants him, but I don't think he gets traded. I think they want to see him healthy, and then you can maybe bring up that idea in the offseason, but you really need, like, if they traded Zion at the end of last year's season, like in the playoffs, everybody would have been like, why? This is finally the Zion Williamson we like knew, but I think we were all fresh in the mind that he's healthy right now, and Point Zion is like a fun, different change of pace than what we've seen in the past, and we're forgetting that he only played 29 games in 23 and didn't play in 2022. He's only played 9 games this year. Now, if he's healthy throughout the second half of the year, and he can show what he showed last year, which I think he can, I think everybody's like fresh in their mind is like, we can go out and get this guy that was a number 1 overall pick, is an incredible player still when healthy, and he looks healthy. So I think that can also be a change of scenery. If I did this in the offseason, I would probably put that at 50-50. I just think it's too big of a name to get moved at the deadline, like for his position right now. Fred VanVleet, I don't know. He's got a team option at the end of the year, so it's basically an expiring. Wouldn't shock me if this is like a Jimmy Butler team. I think that's the money that could go to Miami instead of doing Dylan Brooks, Wandale, Green, or Jeff Green, and a couple other guys. Valanciunas, I think, is as good as gone. I wonder if he'd be more of like a... No, well, he's not getting bought out. He's under contract for the next 2 years. But I think a team would want him as a backup center for the playoffs. And I think you don't have to give up a first-round pick to get him. Rui wouldn't shock me either. I think that's somebody that's like in talks financially, same as Jared Vanderbilt before, because he's making $17 million a year, and they're not moving Max Christie. They don't want to move Austin Reeves. Yusuf Nurkic, nobody wants him. I wouldn't want to trade for Nurkic unless you're giving me that 2031 first. And the problem is with the Suns, they're a second apron team, so they can pretty much only do a 1-for-1 Nurkic trade, and that player has to be making less than... what is it? $18 million. And you look at like Clint Capela's making more money. You look at Vucevic, who's making more money. Some of these centers out there that we've talked about, Ayton, obviously, but that'd be a terrible idea. But like maybe they trade Nurkic for Robert Williams, or Nurkic for Jonas Valanciunas, and maybe there's an Oso Ighodaro going back. I don't know why they would do that. Can they move any more seconds? I don't think you're moving your 2031 first to go from Nurkic to Valanciunas. I think that wouldn't be wise. Maybe you do Nurkic in your 2031 first for Mitch, and then that's in a 3-team trade. Maybe. I'm just saying, like, that's like how desperate they could be. I'm sure they would like Brook Lopez, but I don't think Milwaukee is doing that. And lastly, John Collins. I think he's as good as gone. I think Collins should get traded at the deadline, even if it's for 2 seconds and a former like late first round pick that you could take a flyer on. I would like to see Collins in like LA for the Clippers. $26 million this year, $26 million player option the next year, which you're like, he was going to opt into early in the year, but the way he's playing, I think he's going to opt out. Cause he's been a good 3-point shooter this year. I kind of like him as like someone that's going to play 25 minutes off the bench as a center. And you can really space the floor if you have a good defensive power forward. Maybe this is going to be a Orlando Magic team, like 27 years old, fit your timeline. Then you can look to like, because Mo Wagner's out for the year. I know Goga's been good, but Collins could be a good shooting center off the bench. I don't think they can move Carter Jr. this year, unfortunately, because they did extend him late in the offseason, but then you can run the idea of trading Carter Jr. in the playoffs if you do extend John Collins, and that would be a fun team, I think, there. But yeah, that is going to be it for me. I hope you guys did enjoy this trade deadline preview. Bunch of names that we talked about here. If there's a name that I forgot about, you can let me know down below. Like, guys, I think like Austin Reeves aren't getting moved, or Herb Jones aren't getting moved. And you're looking at some of those teams, like maybe San Antonio would move somebody. Would they move Keldon Johnson? Yeah, maybe. I don't know if anybody would want that contract. Could there be another Jazz or Blazer or Hornet that gets moved 100%? So you guys can let me know any names I didn't talk about in the comments on YouTube that you think could be moved, or let me know if you agree or disagree with any of these. And if you're watching, I'd appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already, on the road to 20K on YouTube. And then if you're listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, I'd appreciate a rating and review. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.